Welcome to a dialogue on accountability in the digital age, a dialogue with representatives of a global, multi-stakeholder community.
And I'm your host, Frits Bussemaker, and today I'm delighted and privileged to have a conversation with Irakli Beridze. Irakli, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Fritz, and it's an honor to be with you, and it's a pleasure to have a conversation.
Allow me to introduce you to the audience. You are the head of the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics of the United Nations I4ADA organization. We'll cover that later in our talk. You are also a global Artificial Intelligence Council member of the World Economic Forum, a high-level expert group on artificial intelligence European Commission, and a committee member of I4ADA's Global Initiative on Ethics of Autonomous and Intelligent Systems. Before this, you worked at the OPCW, the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, and you are a native of Georgia. Did I miss anything?
Well, there are a number of things in between and there missed, but in general, thanks a lot, and I'm happy to be with you, Fritz.
Okay. Hey, first of all, UNICRI. What does UNICRI stand for?
Well, UNICRI is an organization which is set up quite a long time ago, starting from 60s, and it is helping and assisting United Nations member states in their quest aimed at crime prevention, criminal justice, rule of law, human rights. It was originally set up to fight organized crime, and then the organization has become bigger, and it sort of contributes to finding solutions for all sort of crime areas. So we are working in that domain, and the center which we set up in The Hague is dedicated to bring in the artificial intelligence and related new and emerging technologies into the domain to see how we can actually bring those solutions to help countries to fight crime.
Okay. Now, what triggered UNICRI to set up your specific unit?
Well, look, starting from, let's say, 2014, 2013, 14, 15, artificial intelligence became a much larger sort of a driving force than it was before. Not that it did not exist before. Obviously, artificial intelligence as a term, as an academic research field has been there since the 50s. But from that point, when I'm talking about 14, 15, that when it sort of started to enter the mainstream. It was still early times, and we initiated one of those first discussions at the United Nations level on how AI as such can bring benefits and how we can avoid the problems, how we can minimize the risks associated to it. So in 2015, for example, I've organized a first meeting at the level of UN General Assembly on artificial intelligence. We had some prominent thinkers on AI present there, conversing with UN member states on risks and benefits of artificial intelligence. And I had an honor to chair and coordinate and moderate that event.
Okay. Now, what are the issues you discussed then, and are they the same as you're discussing now, or has the topic changed over time?
Topic has changed over time. It has become much more refined. So while we were speaking more in general terms about the risks and benefits, and some of those risks still remain as bigger risks, we have sort of went down to the more sectoral and molecular level, when right now we are discussing details of the problems in much more sort of refined way than we were discussing before, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
When even discussions related to ethics, discussions related to the human rights vis-a-vis artificial intelligence has become much more sophisticated, much more refined today than it was before. At that meeting, a lot was dedicated to the existential risks, a lot was dedicated to the larger problems of existential nature, while those problems still remain. Today, we're discussing how, for example, police can use artificial intelligence and how they should do it in a human rights compliant manner. And not only we are discussing it, we are actually doing a lot about it. We are actually creating tools to support law enforcement to use this in a ethical, human rights compliant manner, while that type of discussions back in 2014-15 did not exist because police largely was not using any AI tools back then.
Okay. By the way, before I go into those tools developed, those fears you talked about, would you qualify them as rational or irrational fears?
Oh, all those fears are absolutely rational. I think that anything which is being discussed, most of the discussions taking place on artificial intelligence, I find it absolutely rational. The difference is that some of this threat may not be of immediate nature, but those threats are still there, even including existential threats of creating super intelligence machines is still there, although I don't think that we are facing this in an immediate future. This is not that we are going to create super intelligence machines next year or later this year who is going to take over the world, but at one point, theoretically, this is absolutely possible. So the existence of these discussions are absolutely rational.
Okay, now I got that, because I've noticed when I prepared this interview, I see you come across a lot on the internet explaining, creating awareness what the issues are. And where do you feel we are today? Is there enough awareness that this is something we need to take serious, or are you still in awareness mode? We need to educate the world.
No. I think that that's a sort of several parallel processes happening. Although right now, a lot of people, including general public, is aware of the threats or is aware what artificial intelligence is. The percentage of the penetration of that knowledge is still not sufficient, and distribution across the globe is also not sufficient. Give you an example. Only 60 countries in the world, around 60 countries, have adopted their strategies, national strategies of artificial intelligence, which leaves around 130 countries without any kind of strategies.
Yeah.
And those strategies are not just like action points. Those strategies are documents which gives the directions of the attention countries would like to pay on certain domains related to artificial intelligence. And that also kind of creates a larger problem of this digital global divide, which is happening, and the dangers associated to that.
Okay. I want to come back to a remark you made about tools being developed. Can you give us a couple of examples of the tools which are developed managing artificial intelligence or artificial intelligent tools? Because it can work both ways.
So at the moment, there are many AI tools which are developed and being used in public sector, in private sector, while while the sort of penetration of that has happened really in an exponential way.
Yeah.
When in 2014 and 15, there were only a handful of maybe examples, if any, which would qualify to AI tools. Today, we have thousands or tens of thousands of such examples. But let's look at the domain of, for example, policing, right? One of the vivid and the probably most controversial tools which is being used is the face recognition technology. And why is this controversial, right? And for the audience who is very well versed in this, no need to explain, but let's just sort of pinpoint why it is. As an example, if an innocent man or a woman would be identified wrongly by police using face recognition technology and put in detention, even for a briefly, it causes an enormous distress and machines can make mistakes. And those are the things which really creates a very problematic sort of angle to the use of it. Then we're talking about the data, which in many cases have been biased. And we have seen those biased data being used by governments or law enforcement agencies in different parts where certain racial groups could be discriminated, or certain ethnic groups could be discriminated, or certain genders could be discriminated, and so on and so forth, which creates a very, very problematic use case for these technologies. At the same time, the technology itself is very useful. You can solve crimes relatively quicker if you do deploy face recognition technology. We just had recently a case in one of the countries where a crime case was solved very quickly by using face recognition technology. A perpetrator was identified and detained before committing other crimes, while we also had a case where an innocent person was detained, including for a couple of days, because of the use of face recognition technology, and a lot of distress was caused.
Okay, now I understand facial recognition is a good example which explains what the role of your organization is. Just to be clear, are you then, as Unicre, just creating the awareness we could have this bias in a system? Are you advocating then things like transparency, you need to know how it works? Or can you go beyond that discussion?
Yeah, so what we are doing, Fritz, is that, I mean, the advocating and the awareness raising is a small portion of our work, which also is there, and we are definitely going to continue this. But what we are doing is that we are contributing in real policy developments, in real policy making. For example, on the side of the face recognition technology, we partnered up with World Economic Forum and Interpol, and we created a specialized process of responsible limits of the use of face recognition. We issued a white paper and set up a special process where now 5 pilot countries are going through the testing phase of using the methodology which we developed for them to use face recognition technology in a responsible, human rights compliant manner. And this is happening actually right now as we speak, those testing countries and pilot countries. At the same time, we also have another process happening together with Interpol and with support of the European Commission of development of a specialized toolkit for the responsible use of artificial intelligence in law enforcement in general. And this is a specialized guidebook of compilation of tools for the law enforcement to use this technology in a responsible, human rights compliant manner. This will be launched later this year, and we'll start piloting in the countries. So what we are doing at the Unicre Center for AI and Robotics is, apart from advocacy, we're actually developing real policy guidelines and real policy books, as well as creating real tools as well. And I can tell you about it, what are the type of tools we are working on.
Okay, yeah, well, definitely interested also to know about that. Before I go that, I have one other question related to this. Who do you see as your audience, your main audience?
So our main audience is, I mean, we're working in a sort of a multi-stakeholder manner, and we are working with different stakeholders on audiences. Of course, the target audience on the number of those policy tools we are developing are the law enforcement agencies, police organizations globally. So we servicing 193 UN member states. And within that, law enforcement is the main sort of recipient of the tools or policy recommendations and guidance which we are creating. On the other side, we are also working with the private sector. We are also working with academia, and also working with other government offices and entities as well, and larger family of the United Nations, where we participate in numerous initiatives and undertakings of other organizations, like, for example, ITU's AI for Good summits and many other initiatives we met together as well.
Yes. Okay. Now, you just mentioned you're looking at the ethical side, making certain that technology has that ethical, I would say, restriction. To what extent also accountability discussion when using AI?
Yeah, accountability is one of those principles or requirements which we always talk about it, among with fairness, robustness, explainability. People need to understand that using artificial intelligence systems will have a certain level of accountability. And those processes need to be set up in a proper, clear, and understandable way, so that this is a very powerful technology which potentially can bring a lot of benefits, but potentially can create a lot of problems as well. So it has a lot of risks inherited to it. And the accountability is one of those possible requirements which should be embedded in any processes, from the design to the deployment to the sort of whole cycle of implementation.
Okay. Now, I remember in the beginning you said, well, the main technology we're looking at is artificial intelligence, but also other new technologies. So what other technologies do you also now take on board to review and control?
So what we are looking at is that at the center is not only sort of AI is a bigger domain, obviously, and we are focusing on that, but we're also looking at how other new and emerging technologies can have a role, or can be sort of affiliated with the type of initiatives which we are doing. Let's say right now, we're looking quite a lot on the domain of blockchain. We're also looking at how terms like metaverse will come into place, and I've organized 2-3 sessions already last year, and this year, and we're looking at a couple of interesting projects related to the metaverse. More we will go into those virtual worlds, and more people will participate, more understanding, definition of the problems, and solutions of the problems would be required. Because at the moment, this looks like a kind of a Wild West where people are participating, but we don't clearly understand fully the risks, and we don't clearly understand how to come up with the solutions and what steps we need to make to govern those virtual worlds, which at one point can become an important parcel of our existence.
Yeah, no, I see that as well, and that brings me the question: if we don't understand it enough, that has an impact on, say, policy we can develop and rules and regulations because of that. Digital technology is still going to be developed at the same fast pace. So, how do you then? Because that creates a gap, an accountability gap. Do you still believe policy development is the way to go, or do you also see other additional solutions how we can mitigate that accountability risk?
Look, I've never advocated in stifling innovations. I mean, you cannot stifle innovation.
No, yeah.
And this is not something what we need, and we all agree to that. Innovation brings in a lot of benefits to humanity, and this is the way we have been progressing. At the same time, we need to be really careful when we create something new, so that along the way we're not going to hurt people. We're not going to hurt large amount of people, and the goal of creating technology should be to serve us rather than us being used by it or by someone else. Therefore, This is a complex and complicated process, obviously, and we will have some hinders along the way. That's why we had scandals like Cambridge Analytica and others related to data when at that particular time there was not enough governance included. And the initiatives like the GDPRs, European AI Acts, and other things are certainly pioneering initiatives for now, but are creating those foundations, which is going to help us govern this domain, ensuring the technology is there to find solutions for us rather than create problems for us.
Okay, so I'm here. Am I hearing you being optimistic that we will get there? We will find a balance between fast developing technology and a system to help govern that technology?
We have no other choice to find this kind of balance, and we have no other choice to work very hard to come up with that type of solutions. Because the other way would be is that we just let it go, which we cannot do it. Therefore, we have to come up with these solutions. We need to work extra hard, extra vigilant. We need to learn from the mistakes which was made in the past, and apply that in the future to make sure that our solutions are also robust, our solutions are also explainable and applicable globally.
Okay, got that. Irakli, last couple of questions. Where would you put your effort?
I think that there is a lot of work to be done. Innovation is happening on a daily basis. We see new tools coming up. We see new domains are progressing. Like I've mentioned, metaverse, but I will mention also the Web 3.0, this whole new generation of the internet, which we are evolving into. This is the type of an internet which we have not experienced before. So all of that type of interactions will be very different. You probably remember, Fritz, when you first time used internet, right? It was maybe 20 something years ago, like
20, 30 years ago. Yeah, long time ago. Yeah.
And first interaction with internet was just a sort of a flat interaction when you were just receiving information, and that's it. Today's internet and the usage of it is completely different than it was 20 years ago, when we are all participants, commenting, straight away sharing on social media, and everything is happening instantly, and we are creating data, we are creating content and all of this, and we're already involved in the life. And the next generation, so-called the Web 3, is going to be a total different than what we have now, and it's going to be an amazing experience. But at the same time, that amazing experience also requires us to take steps that our children, ourselves, are there in a safer environment, in a safe environment, that nobody gets hurt.
Would you then also assume that those digital natives who've grown up with the internet, that those will be equipped with that background to help govern the technology? Are we in a phase where we're moving from, you could say, we've grown up, we were born in an analog age.
Correct.
So maybe our generation, for us, it's quite difficult to understand how we could govern this stuff. But can we be optimistic enough that we will solve this at the end, as you mentioned?
Well, I hope so, and I'm personally very optimistic about the future in general. And while the world is experiencing numerous problems currently, and the world has experienced numerous problems along the sort of development of our civilization, we still came a very long way. The type of discussions what we are having right now, it's still way better or way more sophisticated and way more advanced than we had it even 20, 30, 50, 100 years ago. So overall, trajectory is very positive. Overall, what I see is that we are learning, we are developing, and we are becoming better at what we are doing, and much more responsible for what we are doing. It doesn't mean that we need to be relaxed and kind of let it go of it, but I do believe that the generations to come who are native digital natives and who will become participants of Web 3 and the next generations of webs will develop those relationships and governance structures which will make their lives and people around them, their lives much safer and much more pleasant and enjoyable to be in those parallel worlds which will be existing in.
Yeah, great. So optimistic for the future, wait for that next generation. Maybe, well, I'm going to end with one last question. How does a community like the our Institute for Accountability help? How could it help you?
Well, first of all, my compliments to your work and to your tireless efforts, which you've been putting in globally for so many years, and inputs which you are providing to those global developments, which we are also part of it. You know how to do it, Fritz. You always stay on top of the issues. You always innovate. You also bring in the latest of the understandings from different policy makers and different stakeholders, and participating, debating, discussing, and coming up with recommendation solutions is the way you've been always doing it. I'm sure that we'll be cooperating in the future a lot.
Oh, I'm certain, Irakli, that there's a long and bright future for your organization, for our organization. So we will be in contact. Thank you for sharing your insights and what you're doing within Unicre, and good to hear that you're optimistic about the future. So thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you, Fritz, and it was a pleasure to be with you.